Hi everyone, welcome to my web series where I'll be talking about a number of issues that are salient and of particular interest to me. Today I'll be talking about the crypto ecosystem, or should I say the virtual asset ecosystem. And I'll be giving you the insights from both the players in the space, the regulators, and then the truth that is really in the middle. So let's start from the beginning. What are virtual assets? And how do we differentiate them from every other digital representation of money? First of all, we must understand that virtual assets in this context are not related to fiat money or government-issued money in any way or form. The first thing we need to understand is that virtual assets are not powered by your typical payment processors or your banks directly. They are powered by a certain type of entity which have been collectively called virtual asset service providers, VASPs. Now, VASPs do not operate like your typical entities, and the SEC, the primary regulators for VASPs, has classified them into four. They are the DACs, digital asset custodians, DAOPs, digital asset offering platforms, DAX, digital asset exchanges, and then who they have collectively called VASPs. Last year, the SEC issued approvals to 7 entities to play in the ARIP space. Now, the ARIP is commonly misconstrued as a license, but it's not. It is an approval to play within an incubation period that gives you certain constraints. Now, some of those constraints are transaction caps, number of amount of customers, and then the percentage you can grow within which that period. Needless to say, it would seem that the ARIP was not to be construed as a full approval to play in the capital market. However, some operators have taken it as a full license, and the regulators are probably not recognizing it as a full license. So, back to the virtual assets themselves. Some of the characteristics that are known globally is that they are store of value, means of exchange, unit of accounts, but they can also be speculative. However, it would seem that the SEC's posture, by only licensing a lot of entities that play in the stablecoin market, is trying to limit that aspect of speculation. Also, by the Nigerian regulatory regime of classifying virtual assets as purely securities, it would also seem that we have tried to strip away the payment elements of these virtual assets. By the SEC's categorization, the DACs, you can think of them like vaults. They hold wallets in a centralized manner, and then they will host those wallets on behalf of holders of virtual assets. The DAX, you can think of them like exchanges, like the NGX, right? But what they will do is they enable transmission, sending, payments, receiving, all the works. Then we have the DAOPs. The DAOPs are going to serve like IPOs, right? But instead they do initial coin offerings. And what they will do is that they will enable minting of virtual assets based on underlying assets such as fiat currencies, commodities, and securities. And then the VASPs are kind of the guys that do all of the other things. They provide wallets, any other thing that you cannot classify under those 3 things, then you go VSP. Think of the ARIP like the CBN AIP license. Basically, it's saying, take this approval, go and test your infrastructure and see whether you can accommodate the features, the functionalities, the customers that you intend to onboard and roll out. However, this is supposed to be done in a controlled and ring-fenced environment, and the SEC has given guidelines on how it must be done. Please do not think this is supposed to be done from a commercial perspective. Therefore, an ARIP does not mean you are a CMO yet. The existing framework speaks to fully licensed VASPs. Therefore, an ARIP does not allow you to get access into the banking sector. The regulation has strictly classified virtual assets as securities and eliminated a lot of features that would have enabled it to solve payment problems. So I would say yes. Based on what we have said, the SEC framework is very clear. The CBN framework is also very clear. However, there is a gap in between. The SEC framework says there are 4 types of VASPs. The CBN says VASPs. There needs to be some co-joining there. The CBN framework also doesn't mention anything about the ARIP. So therefore, it would mean that with an ARIP, there is no access to the banking sector, technically. My recommendations are the CBN should adopt the stratification of VASPs just as how the SEC has. Banks must also adopt stratification of the VASPs in line with the SEC regulation. The VASPs must desist from parading the ARIP licenses like full licenses. They must wait for the incubation period of 1 year, get their CMO license, and then hit the market. And that brings us to the end of episode 1. I'll see you at the next episode.